Welcome on Texas Football, Sunday edition. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by C.J. Vogel. C.J., you and I had a chance to take in the games yesterday, not only yesterday, but also Friday. Two Longhorn, obviously Longhorn rivals go down, both Oklahoma and A&M. What did you think of those two games? And then what did you think of all four games in total?
Yeah, what a first round, I guess. I mean, we had two fun games. One maybe not really even fun at all, but it was something, right? That's what we wanted to sign up for. I think there's a lot to work on. We'll talk about the college football playoff a little bit later and what needs to change there, Bobby. But I think for Texas, there probably wasn't two more enjoyable games all season long than the back-to-back of OU blowing a 17-point lead and A&M failing to score a touchdown at home against Miami. So all in all, I mean, you missed the playoffs. The season doesn't go your way, but I'm sure that was a pretty fun back-to-back game for Longhorn fans.
I feel like my reverse jinx worked. I picked both OU and A&M to win just so they could lose. That was the way to do it. The other two games were blowouts, and indicative of a system that likely needs to change overall. What that looks like and what that will be, they have until January 23rd to make any alterations for 2026. We'll see what Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, Jim Phillips, Brett Yormark, and the Notre Dame athletic director come up with, but something needs to change because two games were just non-competitive, and that's not what you want to see in a college football playoff. Those guys should be at the Liberty Bowl, not in the college football playoff. No offense to them and their situations. All right, let's talk a little bit about A&M and OU because, frankly, look, this was an opportunity for both of those programs to take a step up and say, hey, we belong among the nation's elite. Neither one really got it done. And both of them have ultimately lost to Texas. So neither one of them makes it to the quarterfinals. Do you think that puts some tarnish on their seasons? Because I certainly do. I feel like A&M's in particular, and Mike Elko in his post-game press conference said it multiple times. These last two games, we didn't get it done. Well, who did you get it done against other than Notre Dame in week 2? And the answer is really nobody. They beat nobody this year other than Notre Dame in week 2. They didn't beat a single team with a winning record in their conference. Okay. And or the non-conference teams, what have you. The point I'm making as it relates to the Aggies is they had a golden opportunity and they squandered it. And then you have the Sooners, and you look at that and you go, man, what's their way out of this mess? Because you can't get much better on defense than what they are, yet Alabama put up some points against them. What were your thoughts?
I'll start with Oklahoma because that was the first game, right? Your defense allows 27 points at home, which had really been stout, one of the best defenses in all the country. And then, Alabama had looked like a disaster towards the back end of the season, right? Auburn game was ugly. Obviously, we watched the SEC championship game. Georgia was on a whole different planet than Alabama in that game as well. There was no reason to think at any point that Alabama was going to walk into Norman and put up 27 points. I know they finished with 34 with the pick 6, but offensively, they found a rhythm. They picked apart the Oklahoma secondary. They still couldn't run the football, and it didn't matter. And that's kind of the big issue for Oklahoma is, look, they're stuck with what they are defensively. That's a good defense. But they won't go any further with the quarterback and with the lack of a run game. Only 55 rushing yards. The quarterback missed number of plays down the field. Obviously, the pick 6 was atrocious, Bobby. They have a decision to make, and I think the decision's already been made for the quarterback. John Mateer will be back at Norman next year. There's not right now a future that is viable for him in the NFL. So how can you elevate your program if the defense remains the same, which is very good, but you're stuck with the quarterback that, quite frankly, is errant with the football and installs drives on his own? And that's same conversation could be had for A&M. And to your point, they were handed a golden platter with their schedule and the way that it fell in their lap this year, right? With the schools in the SEC that they faced, that maybe their season didn't go as well, right? Fired coaches, coordinators, quarterbacks, whatever it was, it fell into their lap beautifully. They had a home playoff game, and they failed to score a touchdown because, well, the quarterback, when asked to throw the ball down the field, just simply cannot do it. And I don't know what they do, because I know that Marcel Reed is going to he has a ridiculous NIL ask out for A&M right now. If A&M fulfills that, look, that hamstrings them for other positions on the field. But do they have the stones to say, hey, this isn't the option for us? Because I don't believe that there's a single reason to think A&M is going to be a contending team in the SEC or in the college football playoff if that is their quarterback in 2026. I just don't believe that's going to be the case.
I agree with you on both counts, and I would say this. Marcel Reed helps move the chains really well. Not sure if he helps you really score touchdowns. He's a different style of quarterback. I would add this about Marcel Reed. When he's pressured, he becomes a totally different quarterback. Now, everybody becomes a totally different quarterback than pressured, but he seems to revert really poorly if it's not a first or second read. And to your point, I don't think he has the arm strength really to press the ball down the field. And that's what we saw yesterday against Miami. He just was not good in the air. Now, the wind was swirling and all of that stuff. Miami's got a good defense. But look, last two games against Texas, or last three games, I think, he had 7 turnovers against in 2 games against Texas, 1 game against Miami. He's had 7 turnovers.
And no touchdowns.
That's just too much. And I don't know. I think that to your point, I think the Aggies have a situation to address. I would add this. They only scored 3 points yesterday. Well, that's with their current offensive coordinator. They just elevated their wide receiver coach to become the new play caller and offensive coordinator. So I don't know how they think that's necessarily going to get better. Casey Concepcion's off to the NFL. They've got several offensive linemen leaving. It just doesn't smell right. And if they go back to Marcel Reed, maybe he's lost some of his leverage in their negotiation, right? That's probably right. As far as John Mateer is concerned, look, he has been errant with the football. He stops drives that otherwise look pretty good. They've got to find a way to start being able to run the ball, though.
Yes.
That's the issue that the only way to move the ball that they had against good teams this year was actually John Mateer running the ball, not anybody else. And until they can do that, I don't know that they're helping their quarterback. But Peyton Bowen will be gone for them next year. Maybe one of the linebackers will be gone. They'll graduate a little bit, but I think Brent Venables has that program a little bit better situated to stomach the mass exodus that he's going to see compared to Mike Elko in Aggie land this coming year. What do you agree with that, or are you a little bit different?
No, I believe in that because, look, the Sooner defense led by BV and Brent Venables, is in a much better, more consistent spot right now than that of either side of the football at A&M. You would consider that Oklahoma defense to be nationally elite, right? It's in that conversation. Yeah. Led the country in tackles for loss, right there in sacks. Like the havoc plays showed up towards the back end of the year. I always kind of look at this, and this plays into the Texas side of things too, Bobby, because when your head coach and whatever side of the ball that he coaches or comes from is the dominant side, it leads me to think that they're going to be in a very consistent spot, competitive spot moving forward. Now, Texas obviously has had a rut offensively over the last year and a half, right? It's been challenged at points.
Yep.
But I look at Oklahoma and say, well, as long as Brent Venables is there, I know that defense is going to be in a good position. On the contrary, I've yet to see that dominant elite defense for A&M. And it's only year 2, right, for Elko at A&M. But the point is they were led by that offense, and they were led by those wide receivers who were the engine of that offense. Again, it wasn't the quarterback. Completed 3 passes beyond 10 yards against Missouri. He was 3-9 passing beyond 10 yards against Texas. He gets challenged against good defenses. It's the wide receivers, and you lose one. Is there another in the stable that can keep that offense going? I don't know.
I know Casey Concepcion is a playmaker too. He's a little bit different. We'll see. I think that you just mentioned something though that I go back with A&M. A&M fans would disagree with you that they didn't have an elite defense. I would tell you that look at how well Miami ran the ball on them, and look at how well even Texas ran the ball on them. And maybe they didn't play. And what Notre Dame scored in the 40s against them.
Maybe
maybe they weren't tested defensively. Correct. Now, that doesn't mean they can't go out and recruit and go to the portal just like Texas is going to try to do and everybody else. So this is far from over. But what do you make of the idea that neither one of these, and I want to go to the next topic, neither one of these teams took true advantage of their opportunity to kind of separate themselves and go into that next, elevate themselves into the next stratosphere or strata from a mindset of recruits, portal players, etc. Oh, yeah, they made the playoffs, but they lost the first one compared to Texas going to 2 straight playoffs, going to the semifinals last year. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think they definitely left some food on the plate, right? And the way they did it, I think, leaves more of a taste in the mouth of recruits saying, hey, you had a 17-0 lead, you squandered it. Or, hey, you hosted an ACC team, in theory, inferior to that of your SEC logo and couldn't score a touchdown. So, yes, they absolutely had opportunities to jump into that next category. And who knows what happens in the next round, right? When you play Indiana or you play Ohio State, that leaves you more opportunity to then make a broader case for yourself in the national scale. We'll never know, obviously. But, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. They squandered the 2 best opportunities to make a name for themselves on a more national scale than what, they already are.
Yeah, the first 2 teams that had a home field advantage to lose playoff games are Oklahoma on Friday and Texas A&M on Saturday. So to that point, OU, by the way, now 0-5 in the college football playoff since it's an advent. A&M 0-1.
To your point about the 0-5, that's probably the most damning part that comes out of this for Oklahoma, because, hey, you've made the playoff before. You've made it under a previous regime. You made it on the current one. But for whatever reason, you don't have the talent. You don't have the coaching. You don't have whatever it takes to win in the college. And it's not just this year. It's not just last year. It's been since this playoff began. It's been the theme that Oklahoma just cannot win in the playoff. So until that happens, I think that's a big thing, a big factor that's working against them across the national scale of recruiting.
Let me ask you this. Next year, just think forward to yourself. Texas versus OU, Texas versus Texas A&M. You think the Longhorns going to be favored against both, as you know it right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I expect all 3 quarterbacks, obviously, to return. Arch Manning, based off of what I've seen over the last 6 weeks of the season, different stratosphere than either of those 2 quarterbacks. Texas will have the pieces defensively as well. The big question, and can either of those 3 teams run the football in 2026? That's going to be the big question for me.
Yeah, because if they can, it makes their quarterback better, makes their defense better. We'll see what happens. As we talk about this and think about it also as well, Longhorns have a diabolical schedule next year. I mean, it's hard, not just Ohio State at home, but a multitude of other games. Is Arch Manning, in your opinion, as it relates to those other 2 quarterbacks, one of the things I noticed is he is better in the pocket than both of those 2 guys. And that's one of the reasons why, Marcel Reed was getting tucked around the waist and getting thrown off. So was John Mateer. Arch Manning kind of plays through that lower contact and is able to do it. I get the feeling that that's one of the reasons why I think that Texas has such an upper hand at quarterback next year.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the ability to feel pressure, evade pressure, and maintain the ability to throw accurately down the field. I think Mateer has that ability, minus the accuracy when making the ball. And I think early in the year against an Auburn, against Michigan, we saw some of those kind of wow plays, as I would call them. And that was kind of how I was like, well, man, he's got something here. There's something to Mateer. And obviously that dissipated as the season continued. He can still elude, but it's not to the level where you see the accuracy follow down the field like we have seen in the second half of the year with Arch Manning. For Reed, it's really interesting because unless he's taken off, if there's pressure in the pocket, he's going down. I couldn't tell you, Bobby, how many times I saw, quote unquote, the self-sacks against Miami yesterday morning. And I'm sitting there saying, well, that shouldn't really be a part of his game, knowing what kind of athlete he is. I think there's just something missing when it comes to the internal clock as a quarterback with Marcel Reed. And I don't know how you replicate that in offseason when, one, you can't hit the quarterback, and two, you're not supposed to really get close to generate that pocket pressure. So that to me is going to be a big issue as well. I'll ask you this, because I know that we're kind of stuck on the A&M, the Oklahoma, and the Texases. When it comes to protecting the quarterback, Bobby, Texas in a good spot with both what we expect both tackles returning. It's all about the interior, obviously. But how does that shake up for you? I know both of those offensive lines still have some decisions to come. But in Austin, knowing that your tackles are likely back for Arch Manning, that has to then put Texas and Arch in another category when it comes to protection and illusion of blitzing pass rushers.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen, to your point, until the portal opens. But we suspect right now that both Brandon Baker and Trevor Gooseby return. That's great. Now, I think both tackles for OU return, except for I think Derek Simmons graduates, but they'll kick out Ryan Foge, who started for him. But A&M's beat up at offensive line. And I will say this, if Arch Manning, Trevor Gooseby, and Colin Simmons come back, all three of those, we expect all three of those right now. If that's the case, Texas has a chance to have 3 top 15 draft picks. That's a lot. I'm going to say this. That's a lot like Ohio State 2024.
Star power.
Yeah, star power at positions of need and presence. I want to add this. Maybe our friends over in College Station can, to close up, maybe our friends over in College Station should, and Marcel Reed should talk to his offensive linemen about piping up in press conferences. They did it against Texas and they got owned. They did it against Miami, 7 sacks later and 3 points on a football field in a college playoff game. Not a good performance in any way you stretch it. So, look, this means that now both teams, though, get to focus on the portal, getting their players back. It will be making, I think, the portal a little bit more competitive for Texas, because these are the two teams that Texas really recruits and competes a lot against. So we'll see how that all plays out. CJ, you have anything you want to finish with? You good?
No, look, it was fun. We had the 2 games, right? A 17-point blowout, or losing a 17-point lead, and another one where there's about almost more missed kicks than points on the board. That was fun, right? At least we found some enjoyment out of that. The other 2 games, Bobby, just a total snooze fest. It was exactly what we thought we're going to be. When Vegas comes out with an 18 and 21-point lines, then what do you really expect is going to happen? I hope that was enough to start the change in the committee. I hope that starts the change of the playoff process to get the best 12 or the best 16, whatever's next in the world of the college football playoff. But that was just...
I'd rather go down to 8 and not... Here's the other gripe I have about the playoff isn't just the teams that made it. Okay. It's that 2 of those games were on TBS on Saturday. That was ridiculous. I mean, no offense. This isn't the NCAA basketball tournament where they can relegate crap to true TV. If that would have been Texas, I would have been pissed off that they had to go on TBS.
Yeah, totally agree.
This is something has changed. Even if they go down to 8, is better than having automatic qualifiers, in my opinion. Yeah. It's got a lot of tweaks that need to happen, in my opinion. We'll see what those look like. Some of it is some conferences that are getting involved. Just I don't know if they're that good. So we'll see. All right, C.J. Vogel, thank you very much. I'm Bobby Burton. Thank you also to our producer behind the scenes, Matt Hutchinson. This has been Sunday Edition on Texas Football. Hook 'em.